hello, and welcome to another evening with me here at the Daily Dope. Normally, I kind of open the show like by going like, hey, today is whatever day. Well, today is actually a day that is marking remembrance of people who have lost their lives because of being transgender or actually having stuck up for people who were transgender. So this is a day of remembrance for those who have lost their lives. So I thought I'd feel kind of stupid starting off the show going, hey, today is. So anyway, let's get on with it because the Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer. I'm back once again as your host here at The Daily Dope, presented by thegaminggang.com. Yes, today is episode 201 of The Daily Dope. So, kind of cool. Settling into the new time slot, too, so I don't know what's going on. Usually, in the afternoons, I know this sounds kind of stupid, but nothing to get all worked up about either. But in the afternoons, when I would stream at 2 o'clock in the afternoon Central Time, I would usually have 10 to 15 people watching live. So, do want to point out, Smokey's on my lap right now. So, that's why I've been petting her, and I'm kind of like, uh-oh, got a little bit of cat hair blowing around. So, what can I tell you about that? So, anyway, today I am actually going to page through and review the gorgeous Dungeons & Dragons Art and Arcana book that has recently come out from 10 Speed Press. Came out late October. So I did have a PDF review copy to take a look at. I've been waiting for the actual physical book to show up. Compliments of the fine folks over at 10 Speed. And we are going to take a look through this, and I am going to review it in just a little bit. But first, I've got the news to dive into. Not a whole lot of news today, so just wasn't a whole lot cooking. There were a few items that I found that, I don't know, just didn't jump out at me. All right, so, you're Smokey. There she is. She's like, kind of like sitting up on my lap, but you can't see her. She's not in the shot. So anyway, do want to point out, because this is a live stream on YouTube, there is chat available, although chat is not on the screen. It's one of the ways that I keep some of the more oddball commenters at bay, I guess I would say. But if you have a question, you want to say hello, or maybe there's something about Art and Arcana you want to see a little closer up, or maybe go back and take a peek at it a little more detail, by all means chime in and I will respond. Anyway, those of you who do not like the tabletop gaming news of the day, just look at the show notes. There are time codes. You can jump right ahead. But there's not a whole lot of news. I only have 2 news pieces. And then a couple items. I'm going to mention that there's some sales already going on. So you can save big on holiday gifts for your friends and family and yourself if you want. No, Smokey. No. You are not climbing up on there. Sorry. I just made sure to get rid of all your hair on that table. So, So if you want to lay down, you can lay down. Or you can hoof it. Smokey very rarely stays on my lap very long during the show. So usually within about 5 minutes of the show beginning, she's like hopped off and run off. Do want to point out, before I jump to the news too, I have made some changes with the cameras. So maybe the videos will be a little bit sharper. I don't know. I honestly don't know. We'll find out. Because sometimes the videos don't look like they're all that sharp, even though it's still 1080. All right, Smokey, I know you're eyeing that. So why don't you just get it going? Get a move on. So one thing I do want to point out is I now have like a tripod in front of me, which I didn't have before. So it is possible that Smokey might bump this. All of a sudden I'll be talking and you'll see like... Anyway, let's jump into the news, because if you're a fan of the Binding of Isaac, or any of the Isaac series of video games, then you might be interested in a new card game that's coming from Studio 71 Games later this month. And here's the dope. The Binding of Isaac: Four Souls is a card game about sacrifice, betrayal, and hoarding. I said hoarding with a D, now with a W. Inspired by the hit video game The Binding of Isaac, obviously enough, the official multiplayer card game has 2 to 4 players taking turns playing loot cards and using items to kill monsters that yield more items, loot, and sometimes souls. Cooperation, barter, and betrayal are encouraged in the game. I do have to point out that, unfortunately, there is not a lot of written information about this game. It was a very successful Kickstarter. Problem is, it was another one of these Kickstarters where most of the information was actually just in images, so that there's no way for you to pull a copy off of that. So what I have done is I have taken the Kickstarter video to get a better idea of this game. Will point out it's a little more than 4 minutes long, but this looks pretty interesting, especially if you're a fan of Binding of Isaac. So let's kick back and take a peek.
Edmund and his family lived in a small house on a hill. Edmund kept to himself, making video games and neglecting his wife and child. Life was simple, and they were happy. That was until the day Edmund heard a voice from inside. "You must design a Binding of Isaac-themed card game. It must be made." "I will do my best to make this," Edmund replied, rushing into the living room and scribbling down drawings on index cards. Again, the voice called to him. "This game must be multiplayer, encourage barter, co-op play, and betrayal. It must feature an endless array of well-known monsters and items from the video game, as well as a slew of randomly chosen playable characters, each with their own unique playstyle." "I will follow your instructions. I have faith in me," Edmund replied. Feverishly, Edmund churned out a prototype of over 300 cards and started testing with his so-called friends and family. But once more the voice called to him. "This game must be crowdfunded via Kickstarter and must feature tons of Binding of Isaac swag for fans." "Yes," he replied, grabbing his prototype and throwing himself down into the unknown depths below.
Designing this was fun and easy. My wife and I had a really fun time creating the cards. I've designed well over 300 cards. I didn't think about converting the game into a card game until Studio 71 kind of approached me and were like, "Hey, would you ever want to do a card game?" Currently, the prototype that we've been playtesting for the past few months, and is still very open to change. I'm hoping to unlock characters and kind of design the characters as we go, so people can, see what all the abilities are for each of the characters, and then try to envision how each of those abilities may affect gameplay. I'm treating this as I would any game that I've ever worked on. Like, this is a serious project that I test multiple times a week for hours with friends. The card game is incredibly similar to the video game, except it doesn't play like it at all. Like, it embodies what the game is, except it's a multiplayer environment. It's competitive, but a little cooperative, and there's a lot of betrayal involved. That's stuff that doesn't exist in the video game at all. People interact a great deal. You take the role of a character with a specific ability that can either hurt or help somebody, but everything else about the game is all there. Well, I hope that they spread the word as much as possible, because we do only have 30 days. I definitely need as much help in retweeting and tell everybody you know, because I hope that everything that I've written down and I've designed over the past few months is able to fit in the game. But in order for that to happen, we need as much support as possible. All I can say is I promise it won't be a cash grab for, hey, we're just going to rebrand an existing game completely with a bunch of Binding of Isaac things. And I am doing my best to make sure that this is a kickstart for a card game that plays well. That, as a designer, that's what I care about. I want to make a very playable and fun game that has a lot of strategy to it that also embodies exactly what the Binding of Isaac is all about. It's all about, you know, breaking the game, hoarding items, and getting screwed over. Like it encompasses everything, you know, that's unique and fun about the game.
All right, so as previously mentioned, the Binding of Isaac 4 Souls is for 2 to 4 players. I'm going to have to assume this is for more mature players out there, simply because the video game itself is kind of a little bit of gross out stuff in it, so I'm thinking probably 14 and up, maybe. I do not really have any indication of how long the game plays, but this will carry an MSRP of $40 when it arrives later this month. So I do have to point out, from what I've heard through the grapevine, what I've heard through the grapevine is that there will not be a lot of copies of this game at retailers. So be sure to check with your friendly local game store, if that's how you purchase your games and stuff. See if they're going to carry it. It is going to ship in like a longer box, right? Like a longer card box. And it looks actually kind of cool. The box itself, it's kind of like, supposed to look like it's almost like a crate. It's supposed to look like a crate. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any good size images to share of the box itself. But gotta say, this looks kind of interesting. Looks like it could be pretty bizarre, right? All right, so since I am talking about Dungeons and Dragons and the history of D&D tonight, as I take a peek through Art and Arcana, I do want to mention there's a new bundle of holding for the role-playing game fans out there, and I've got the dope adventure just in time for the American Thanksgiving holiday. Kind of funny how they say it that way, the American Thanksgiving holiday. I thought bundle of holding is in the US. Maybe they're not. I don't know. Maybe. We present this Indie Cornucopia 6. Our 6th annual collection of top-quality, small-press tabletop role-playing games for just $11.95. You'll get all 3 complete games in our starter collection as DRM-free PDF ebooks. There's Dusk City Outlaws, the January 2017 Kickstarter triumph about crime cartels and crews in the sprawling sandbox city of New Dunhaven. There's the Age of Anarchy, war and intrigue during England's 12th century anarchy, setting for the Brother Cadfael and mysteries, I should say, and the Pillars of the Earth. Oh my gosh, that's right. That is the 12th century. Yes, Ken Follett, all right. There's also Murders and Acquisitions, the cutthroat corporate intrigue, melees in the break room, and promotion by execution role-playing game. Sound like your office? And if you pay more than the threshold price of $24.07, you'll level up and get the entire bonus collection with 3 more titles worth an additional $63. There's Spire, not to be confused with The Spire. This is the Rowan Rook and Card Company role-playing game. Revolution in a mile-high city of 1,000 gods. Then there's Tiny Dungeon 2nd Edition from Gallant Knight Games, which I have reviewed. Really dug it. The new 2018 2nd Edition of the minimalist pick-up-and-play fantasy RPG, including a dozen micro-settings that jumpstart a new campaign. And finally, there's Red Markets, economic horror in a slow-motion zombie apocalypse where civilization is ending, but the rent is still due. 10% of your payment, after payment gateway fees, will be donated to this offer's designated charity, Doctors Without Borders. This bundle will be available for the next 20 days. This is a pretty interesting bundle. Although I have to admit, I am kind of surprised. It is a little, well, okay, not the standard. Well, I guess not as many games as you would normally see in a bundle of holding, because effectively we're looking at 6. But These are much newer games than we're used to seeing in a lot of the bundles of holding as well. This is all brand new stuff. Now, of course, Tiny Dungeons 2nd Edition, I got a huge kick out of. I think it's perfect for people just getting into role-playing games, or if parents want to role-play with their family, with the kids, things like that, or just newbies to role-playing itself. I have heard great things about Spire, and I have also heard some pretty interesting things about Red Markets. So definitely something to check out. You can get 6 full-fledged RPGs. In fact, I think Red Markets is almost like 500 pages long. So that is a pretty big PDF for a core game, right? That is a big core book. So not a bad deal. Just a couple cents over $24 for all of that. So definitely check that out. So while I'm talking about RPGs, I should mention that the Black Friday sale has already begun over at DriveThruRPG, as well as some of the other drive-thru sites. So the DM's Guild. So of course that's the 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Well, I shouldn't say 5th edition. It's D&D. It's Dungeons and Dragons. Drive-Thru Fiction, Drive-Thru Comics. I think that might be all of them. But they're having the Black Friday sale going on, so it's actually going to run through Cyber Monday. So right now, just about everything that I have seen over at DriveThruRPG is on sale for 33% off. You do want to check DriveThruRPG on Black Friday as well, because there is going to be some Black Friday sales, some big, deep discount sales. And what I have seen in past years is that like the Black Friday through Cyber Monday, sometimes they'll toss out like bundles at like just ridiculously cheap prices. Now, I'm not positive if they'll only do that on Black Friday or if they'll do it throughout the weekend. I'm not positive. I'm just saying, as of right now, through Cyber Monday, you can save 33% off almost everything on DriveThruRPG, Drive-Thru Fiction, it might be Drive-Thru Cards, and then DM's Guild. So definitely check that out. I do want to point out also that if you are not familiar with the Daily Dope or the Gaming Gang, if this is your first time checking out one of our videos, we are an affiliate of DriveThruRPG. So if you are going to pop over to any of the drive-thru sites, please stop by thegaminggang.com. First, click on one of our banners, and that way, if you happen to make a purchase, we'll get a very small portion of that sale. And I tell people all the time, those little bits, the 10 cents, 25 cents here and there, all really adds up. It really adds up a lot. And people will be kind of amazed how much that really helps keep the Gaming Gang around, because in essence, it pays for our hosting just about every single month. All right, so I'm going to get into my page through and review of Dungeons & Dragons Art and Arcana in just a couple of minutes. Just real quickly, just wanted to mention, first of all, number one, I was originally going to unbox Codenames Marvel today from USAopoly, and then this showed up in the mail. So I was like, oh yeah, I have got to share this. Not that I've got anything against USAopoly or anything, or this game, because I still have the thing that I've got to bust out the review for, because we've only played it once. I haven't had a chance to play it. The thing, what is it? Infection at Outpost 51 or something like that. It's based on John Carpenter's movie. So, but I was supposed to do this today, and then that showed up in the mail, and I was like, oh, gotta show that off tonight, because it is, well, we'll take a look at it, and then I'll do my review. So, just wanted to point that out. That's going to be next week. Now, on tomorrow's show, I know Wednesdays are usually Wargame Wednesdays, but I'm going to make an exception tomorrow. I am going to actually review Cryptid from Osprey Games, because I want to make sure I get a review of this out there before Black Friday as well, because there are some really good games that you're going to want to keep your eyes peeled, see for, some companies might have them on sale, some game stores, even checking out Amazon. Sometimes Amazon on Black Friday will have some board games and role-playing games on sale. So definitely something that you want to check out. So anyway, so the other thing I wanted to mention, and I don't usually like air dirty laundry or anything like that on the show, but I was really surprised. I had reached out to Goodman Games to, first of all, to see if they would put me on like their press list for information about their releases, because I've always heard great things about Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics, which is pretty new. I think now they got like Star Crawl, which is kind of like a science fiction gonzo, like old school OSR game. Or I should say, I guess, like Neo OSR. It's not really OSR because it is their own kind of system. But, and their adventures and stuff like that. So I thought, you know, I've put news out from Goodman Games releases from time to time when I've stumbled across it secondhand. So I thought, hey, you know, I should reach out, see if they want to, you know, add my email address to their press list that they send stuff out to, and see if they might be interested in, you know, having the gaming gang do some reviews, right? Doesn't hurt. I mean, you know, a lot of role-playing game companies like our coverage, or my coverage, I guess I'll say. So I get an email back today, and it was basically just kind of like, take a hike. I was like, wow. It's like, yeah, if you want to find out what's going on with us, you can just sign up for our newsletter. I was like, okay, so I wrote back, and I was like, just to double check, because I thought, well, maybe, you know, maybe I wasn't clear about, hey, do you want us to do some reviews for you? I mean, just the website alone pulls in 80,000 unique visitors a month. That's kind of a big deal. I said, you know, so you're saying you don't want any kind of coverage, like review coverage or anything like that, or previews, stuff like that? Just want us to sign up for your newsletter? And the email came back and was like, yeah, that's it. So I'm kind of like, yeah, well, guess again. God, you know, I had heard that this was a cool company, but man, that's pretty lame, you know? I don't know. You know, what are we talking about here? PDFs or something? Geez, sorry, don't mean to twist your arms here. So, yeah, I was very, very surprised by that, because I had heard that it was a pretty cool company. Now, I had to point out, it was not Joseph Goodman who emailed me back. It was some rep from their, like, info email address. So I'm not, you know, I'm not, like, picking on Joseph Goodman, who owns and runs the company. But I'm just like, wow, I'm kind of surprised. It'd be one thing if, you know, some guy coming out of the blue who's never done any reviews, or I got, like, you know, 5 reviews out there, not over 500 reviews, not approaching 500 videos, right? Not over 10,000 articles on thegaminggang.com. Don't know. Anyway, so yeah, very, very surprised. Very disappointing. Very disappointing. I was hoping that they'd be like, oh yeah, I like your website. Like most companies are, right? Most companies are like, yeah, oh, yeah, definitely dig your site. Yeah, let's work on something. So anyway, oh well. So as far as Friday, I don't know if I'm going to have a show. I'm starting to think maybe not. I'm thinking maybe I won't have a show, because I have to, even though it's Black Friday, and I mean, there isn't really anything I'm planning on, like, going out to go get on Black Friday. I still have to do my cardiovascular rehab on Friday as well. I got to do it tomorrow, and then I also have to do it on Friday. So I don't know. I have no idea. I'm leaning towards maybe not doing it. So because that might give me some an opportunity to do some play some games Friday afternoon. Because there are some things that I am sitting on that I really need to get enough plays in to do some reviews of. All right, so anyway, enough of that. Hey, that was actually, even with me rambling and with the news, pretty quick. Only about 24 minutes in, which is good, because we're going to need a lot of time to be looking through for nearly 450 pages of this book, because we are going to go look at every single page. This thing is gorgeous. If you are tuning in to take a look at Dungeons & Dragons Art and Arcana from 10 Speed Press, well, hey, welcome aboard. The book is written by Michael Whitwer, Kyle Newman, John Peterson, and Sam Whitwer. The hardcover clocks in, at least this hardcover edition that I've got, clocks in at 448 pages, and it does carry an MSRP of $50. I do want to point out there is a Barnes & Noble exclusive that has a red cover, same artwork, red cover, which does also have, I want to say it's got 6 gatefolds, which this will not have. Now, I don't know if this is still the same MSRP or not, if it's $50 at, I would take a guess it probably is, at Barnes & Noble. But then again, even though this book has got an MSRP of $50, I have seen it as low as $34 on Amazon, brand spanking new. There's also a special limited edition of Dungeons & Dragons Art in Arcana, which carries an MSRP of $125, and it's got some pretty cool extras, and I will talk about that as we kind of page through here. But let's pop on over to the other camera here. Oh, I was like, this came. I had reached out to 10 Speed Press, and the press reps from there. I had been my contacts who do PR for Dungeons and Dragons for Wizards of the Coast had kind of given me the heads up on who I should reach out to over at 10 Speed. So I said, oh, I would love to be able to share this book with my audience. And they were like, oh yeah, sure thing. They're like, here's a PDF for you to check out, which I didn't want to just do a review on a PDF, right? But they said, hey, we're going to send you out a physical book. So this is the physical book. Just gorgeous, just really, really beautiful book, really nicely done. Michael Whitwer is actually the author. If you watch the Daily Dope, if you watch the show, you know there's been a few times I've talked about the book about, well, it's kind of a biography, but it's about Gary Gygax, his life and his creation of Dungeons & Dragons, and stuff that he did after the breakup with TSR and through his death. And I really enjoy the book, really like the book, except for some of the liberties, the creative liberties that are taken, where it's kind of like, oh, well, this is what Gygax was thinking and stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of like, but the rest of the book is excellent. So Michael Whitwer is actually the author of that, and I always say that the book is called Master of Imagination. It is actually called Empire of Imagination. So if you get an opportunity, check that out. So basically, what Dungeons and Dragons Art in Arcana is the history of Dungeons and Dragons in artwork. And not just artwork that was in the books, but we're talking, we're going to see maps, we're going to see advertisements, we are going to see all these crazy things. And I swear there are so many items in here that bring back memories. It's like, oh my gosh, it was blowing my mind just looking through the PDF. So we're going to kind of hop in here. So we get a foreword by Joe Manganiello, or Nilio. He's a TV guy. I knew he was a fan of Magic the Gathering. I didn't realize he was a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons. So he wrote the foreword here. Got the ad here for basic D&D. That is the basic book, it looks like, in his hands there. For a free catalog, write TSR Hobbies Inc. P.O. Box 756, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin 53147. So there we go. So I guess Joe's wife had this painting commissioned of his character, his D&D character. So I thought that was pretty funny. He has shown up on a lot of charity streams and things like that as well. So kind of funny how he kind of talks about like being a dork. Well, not necessarily, kind of like a nerd. But what's so funny now is these days, it's like, it's not as nerdy. Trust me, role-playing games are still looked upon by some folks out there like, oh, you play those kind of games? Yeah, okay. But the vast majority of people are like, oh, wow, really? I've always wanted to kind of try that. I've never played one. So, got a little Stranger Things here. We got a little, well, it's not necessarily Critical Role, but Matt Mercer's there. There's Mike Merles. Oh my gosh, like right here. I remember this artwork. It's from the Player's Handbook. So one thing I will mention is a lot of this stuff is actually new to me because I had a lot of the first edition stuff. I had the basic. I don't think I didn't have like the blue or red box. I had friends who did have that, but I was always AD&D. Though I did play a little bit of basic that somebody had run. But even with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I didn't play it or I didn't run it for all that long because it was like my freshman year is when I discovered Call of Cthulhu came out. And I picked that up because we used to pick up like just about anything that was coming out. I mean, we blew so much money on games. I swear I wish that I had a lot of the stuff that I originally had be worth quite a bit of money as long as it was in still good condition. But anyway, I wasn't, I was pretty, I should say I'm almost completely ignorant as far as second edition. Although mechanically, I know it's not that much different than first edition. Or third edition or 3.5. Fourth edition, I did read the core books, and I was like, eh. And then, of course, fifth edition, I've pretty much everything from Wizards of the Coast, I have either or I have actually at least read through, or at least I'm familiar with. So it's kind of interesting. So the book kind of starts off talking about like the the birthplace, just the seeds of Dungeons and Dragons. So I thought it was kind of funny. It's like, this is actually Gary Gygax's personal copy of Chainmail by Gary Gygax and Jeff Perrin. So talking about Gygax's Great Kingdom, we get to see Dave Arneson in a lot of images here. This is the basement in Lake Geneva. And it actually says entrance wargaming room written on there in permanent marker. It's like the first draft of Dungeons and Dragons. This is the house that Gary Gygax lived in Lake Geneva. So we've got some of the artwork from the original brown box of D&D. So we're showing some inspirations for some of the artwork, which I think is kind of funny. You'll see it's a lot of Marvel comics. We've got some Jim Steranko, Nick Fury action there. So that's kind of funny here. Then we have one of the first advertisements for Sword and Sorcery, Dungeons and Dragons. Pretty sweet there. So, talking a little bit about the history of D&D. Don Kay was a friend of Gary Gygax. I want to say Don Kay was his best friend, and the history of Dungeons and Dragons in TSR would probably be very, very different if Don Kay hadn't passed away very early on. I think Don Kay passed away, maybe 78, 79, something like that, if I remember correctly. So here we've got the evolution, bink, 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 of the purple worm. So here in the original edition, I don't know if it's purple, because it's just ink. So we get the first edition, second edition, third, fourth, and into the fifth. Accessory to Adventure. Start showing off some maps here. This is a map from somebody who had played in Dave Arneson's Blackmoor, his Blackmoor campaign. From my understanding, and you have to take a lot of stuff that you hear with a little bit of a grain of salt, but Arneson was kind of like the fantasy idea guy, and Gary Gygax was sort of the rules implementation guy. Although, gotta be honest, sometimes Gary's presentation of rules were not the best. even long after he was gone from TSR, he still he could have used a little help as far as his rules presentation. But as far as I understand, Dave Arneson would just sit there and jot down notes on napkins and stuff like that and send it to Gygax while they were putting together D&D. So, talking about Tomb of Horrors. Now, one of the things I want to mention, my understanding is in the with the special limited edition that carries the $125 MSRP, there is actually a reproduction, I guess I'll say, of the original 1975 Tomb of Horrors that Gary Gygax ran at Gen Con, which is part of, it's like an insert, because the limited edition comes in a box. It's a box set. Outdoor Survival, oh my gosh. Considered one of the worst board games of all time. Although, one of the interesting things, the reason why that's being included in here is Outdoor Survival actually included some random tables that Avalon Hill actually hired TSR to create for them. So it's got a little bit of like a role-playing vibe to Outdoor Survival, although the game is pretty poor. The Beholder, oh yeah, I remember these. I remember those images. God. Man, bringing back the old days. Oh, geez, Dave Arneson's business card. All right, some more different art here. Oh, Sturgis. There's the Blackmore book for Brown Box. Sales will skyrocket with the TSR game line. I mean, I gotta say, I just love this book. I just love it. I just love this book where it's just all the stuff in it. It's not just sharing the artwork. It's telling the story of Dungeons and Dragons as well. And it's not only through, oh my goodness, oh, gotta cover that up there. Once again, they're showing where some of the inspiration for some of the artwork is coming from. But I get a kick out of it because it shares advertisements. There you go, first issue with the dragon. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, the magazine that was originally TSR's magazine. Was it the Strategist? Maybe. I don't know. I forget. All right, so we've got some examples of some of the Dragon covers. Always had some really, really good artwork on the covers of Dragon. People have asked me in the past, what was the difference between Dungeon and Dragon as far as the magazines? And I always told them that as far as Dungeon was basically the magazine that had adventures. I would have like one-shot adventures. There was a period of time, as far as I know, that when Paizo owned Dragon and Dungeon magazine, that they actually had a few campaigns where they actually had an adventure, almost like Adventure Paths now with Paizo. Same thing with Dungeon. But there you go, Clyde Caldwell. Clyde Caldwell did such just awesome artwork. You could always tell Elmore's artwork. You could always tell Caldwell's artwork. Daniel Horn. I'm not familiar with Daniel Horn, but that's kind of funny. It must have been a February issue. So, Origin of the Owlbear. Yeah, there we go. You'll be amazed. Dun, 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 dun. This is a holdup. Oh my gosh. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what this is from, but I remember this layout. It's the DM screen. So, TSR Hobbies belt buckle. So, yeah, a lot of people, yes, the classic. Yes, the classic box. The basic set. I was going to say, oh, there we go. Classic original Monster Manual cover. But I was going to say, a lot of people don't realize just how much money TSR was bringing in back at the height of Dungeons and Dragons. Honestly, it was bringing in more money adjusted for inflation than it does now. And a lot of people out there don't realize just how how many role players actually play 5th edition D&D. And it is a huge percentage of role players out there are playing Dungeons and Dragons. Is that from one of the giant modules? If I remember right. Maybe it's from the Monster Manual. I don't know. Oh, there we go. Classic Player's Handbook, 1st edition cover. Trying to pry out the gem from the eye. You got the lizard man laying here dead, the 2 lizard men. So we've got more of the advertisements. I remember a lot of these advertisements. I remember these modules in it. I had all these modules. This Vault of the Drow is one of my favorite old 1st edition adventures. Always dug that. Because I ran some of my friends from G1 all the way through D3. And then, if I remember right, didn't they later on put it together as like a 7-part book? I mean, it was a book where they collected all of them together, but I think they added an additional adventure at the end. There you go, Gen Con 12. I thought it was very cool for the 50th Gen Con when they set up over in Lucas Oil Stadium. They had set up a facsimile of the Garden Club, whatever that the first Gen Con was held in. I thought that was pretty sweet. All right, so moving right along. So we see there's lots and lots of the original 1st edition artwork in here. We've got some of the various. Is that that's Phineas Fingers? That was one of the comics I always loved. That was one of the reasons why I always got Dungeon Magazine, was for Phineas Fingers. So then we've got some cartoons here. Another cool thing that they do is they'll actually kind of focus on an individual artist or illustrator throughout this book. So that's pretty sweet too. There's the basic set. Yeah, there we go. The old James Dallas Egbert. You know, it's funny. We were playing role-playing games in that when that was all going on, and when it was a big whole, there was a big stink about, oh well, it's devil worship and all this other stuff. I don't know. Maybe it was just because of living in Chicago. It's just we didn't really hear that. I mean, we heard it like through the grapevine in other places, but we never took a lot of heat for it. Funny thing is, some of the artwork early on was a little risque, and I know some people were a little upset by that. But the whole thing was, you know, Gygax and the team at TSR, they didn't necessarily realize that it was all like a lot of kids playing the game. They were thinking, oh, it's, you know, college students, stuff like that. So bring a dragon into your classroom. World of Greyhawk. Yep, I remember this. I had that. Many Faces of Lolth. Caves of Chaos from Keep on the Borderlands. If I remember correctly, Keep on the Borderlands had sold more copies than any other adventure for Dungeons and Dragons ever, because that was what was included in the basic set, or was it the expert set? It was included in one of the sets. I think it was the basic set. So, like I said, I did not play really basic or even expert. It was advanced D&D for us. So, in fact, I've mentioned before. Oh, here we go. Here we start seeing the reprints of these, right, against the Giants. So it's G1 through 3. So we should be looking at almost the 2nd edition here. But I was going to say, no, see, now I lost my train of thought. leveling up. Had Boot Hill, had Gamma World, had Top Secret. Man, Top Secret. Top Secret was pretty cool. It was a percentile game. So was Boot Hill to some extent. Top Secret had a lot going for it. And I want to say, if I remember right, my friend Scott Weigel ran Top Secret. So did Tim Phelan back in high school, too. Gamma World I had, but I don't recall us ever playing it. Although I kind of like, I don't think it was so gonzo in the first edition. I think the later editions, the Gamma World did start getting a little gonzo, which actually to me I think is a little cooler. Yeah, Fiend Folio. Expert D&D. This must be a sketch. Oh yeah, remember those terrible dice? Wow, those dice that came in the box sets were just awful. Just awful. And I mean, I've seen some really poor dice in my day, but they were the worst dice. Just the worst. I remember this comic ad. The RPGA, which was basically TSR. Oh, good old Grenadier Miniatures. I had a bunch of these. I recall you could go. There was a hobby shop that was in Chicago. It really wasn't a big game shop, but it was a hobby shop, and they did have some Grenadier miniatures, and they had some other companies too, but mainly Grenadier. They had the box sets, but they also had like individuals, and that was back in the day when you could pick up a miniature for less than $1. So I remember having a bunch of those. I played a bunch of Knights and Magic with that, which I now actually own the rights to that. In fact, I might be doing a bit of a giveaway for the PDFs in the very near future to thank all the YouTube subscribers and Twitter followers. So here we got the TSR minis. For the day, the detail from the TSR minis were decent. I seem to recall that the detail was a little bit better than Grenadier. Grenadier was all right. But compared to what we've got these days, oh, awful. Just awful. So, yeah, oh my gosh, the computer fantasy game. Yeah, I remember that. I'm trying to remember who had this. I know I didn't have it. I wonder if it was my friend Chris Capps. Or maybe it was Elliot, because it's from '81. Maybe Elliot had that. My best friend Elliot Miller. So now we start getting into stuff that I was not familiar with. Like, so we had the Intellivision, which I never had Intellivision. So we had some of the video games there. Start getting into some more problems with different groups who were trying to tell people just how horrible fantasy role-playing games were. There we go. Mazes and Monsters. Yep. Gosh, that was just awful. Just awful. It wasn't even true. That private detective who was like laying the blame on a bunch of role-playing stuff, that was all just BS. Explosive Runes, The Crash of 1983. So, this is when we started to see changes being made in Dungeons & Dragons. Where it's like, oh, okay, well, we're not going to have demons and devils anymore. So, there's Frank Menzer, I should say. It's funny because he's still around, Frank's still around, and I believe he's still around. And he looks a little bit like Ed Greenwood. A little like Ed Greenwood. So we've got the Red Box Inspirations. But like I said, I mean, it's like, this is just a gorgeous book. I love this book. I mean, they could have easily just said, oh, okay, well, we're just going to run out some artwork from, the various different books that came out from TSR and Wizards of the Coast. But, I mean, they've got stuff that was from, like, Shrinky Dinks, Color Forms. the video games before now we get into the animated series, which I didn't watch. When this came out, I was already a little too old for this kind of cartoon. I was more into checking some of the animated stuff out. Then we got the third set, the companion rules. Now we're starting to get into the Dungeon Monster Manual 2, Dragonlance, which was a huge setting for Dungeons and Dragons. There's some Elmore artwork. You can always tell Larry Elmore's work. So the Hickmans just really breathed new life into Dungeons and Dragons with the Dragonlance setting and the novels that were coming out. I'd be interested to see Wizards of the Coast release some 5th edition stuff. With the release that actually came out in stores today of the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica and the Eberron PDFs, it's over on DM's Guild, we might see some other settings that a lot of folks would love to see once again. Maybe not necessarily appear in hardcover book form, but we may see it arrive in PDF. So that is a possibility that's out there. All right, so we start getting into the 2nd edition stuff. Oh, well, here we got the Temple of Elemental Evil that only took an additional, 6-7 years to finally come out after Village of Hamlet. There's the Village of Hamlet map, the original one. The D&D pinball game. I don't remember ever seeing that. I don't remember seeing that one. Ah, there we go. Now we get into Forgotten Realms, which is now the default setting for Dungeons and Dragons. Start getting into some little more photorealistic artwork. The Ruins of Undermountain. I've heard really good things about this. I mean, this is kind of a mega dungeon. But I had heard really, really good things about this. Of course, if I remember right, I think that's an Ed Greenwood adventure for Forgotten Realms. If you're into mega dungeons, the Waterkeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage is something that I did a first look video of already. I'm going to have a review of that pretty soon, because I've been reading through that. I think it's going to throw some fans of 5e for a loop, to be very honest with you, because 5e has not seen a mega dungeon, and it's got really. I've said it before that 5th edition really does have an OSR vibe to it. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but to me it does. And this mega dungeon for Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage really, really has an OSR feel to it. Boxes of Gold, yes. Now, we had these. We had the SSI games. So we played these. I know for a fact, Elliot Miller and I would play. We actually teamed up at his house, and we would be playing those. Here we go. So here's 2nd edition. So just the look of 2nd edition really, really changed. Lot brighter. Not as kind of dark. Just even graphically, right? But then again, this is when I start getting into stuff where I don't know. I had no idea. Like Spelljammer, sure, I heard of Spelljammer. I kind of knew what it was supposed to be, but I mean, I had no clue. I have no point of reference for this stuff. So we got the Mind Flayer. I really do like these sections here that are showing like the evolution of different monsters throughout the different editions. Oh, there we go. There's Strahd. Another huge setting that really brought new life to new blood. No pun intended, I guess. To Dungeons and Dragons as well. Hollow World, I've heard of it. I know nothing about it though. I'm assuming, of course, that we're talking like Hollow Earth kind of thing, but probably in a fantasy setting. You're the dragon. It's coming. the new, easy to master Dungeons and Dragons. Dark Sun. Dark Sun was once again another setting that I was not overly familiar with, but didn't. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Brahm. Brahm did the artwork for a lot of the Dark Sun, and it was something that was just completely unlike anything people had played in D&D before, as far as a setting. So that is a setting I would not be surprised to see some sort of PDF release at some point in the future for 5th edition. Doubling down. This once again. Now this is a setting I really knew nothing about. The Al Qadim. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Setting. Yes, I understand it's kind of like Middle Eastern and that, but sort of like Arabian Nights. But once again, know nothing about it. So then we start getting into Bob Salvatore's novels that started coming out. And he's written all of, 170 of those, I think? I'm kidding. It's 20-some. I know that. Isn't it like 27? Gen Con, where it all began. I have to say, I have very fond memories going up to Gen Con up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Really, really enjoyed ourselves. And not that I'm saying that we don't have a great time in Indianapolis either, but, I mean, we had a blast up in Milwaukee, and seeing that we lived in Chicago, and I still live in the Chicago area, it was much, it was about an hour closer than Indianapolis is. So, the fall of TSR. This is kind of sad. There's a sad story here. How how Gygax got run out of town after his partners, the Blooms, were pretty much just destroying the company, bankrupting the company. And this was at a point in time where TSR had been pulling in millions and millions of dollars every year with Dungeons and Dragons, not even counting any of their other stuff. Although, I mean, Dungeons and Dragons was always their big money maker. So this is so Gygax comes back from California, where he's just basically been overseeing, well, he's been partying a lot too, but he's been overseeing the entertainment side of TSR, just like Stan Lee with Marvel. He went out to California to kind of oversee the entertainment aspects of Marvel. Well, Gygax did the same thing for TSR. And then he found out that they were pretty much in the red. So came back. He got TSR back on track, but gosh, I can't remember her name. And there's so many different stories about what happened. I don't know. But basically, Gygax got forced out. So he got forced out. And then TSR hung on for a while. They printed Buck Rogers, which was a complete failure. And really the only reason why they did that was because the woman who had taken over the company, her family owned the rights to Buck Rogers, so they were getting paid off for that. It was just, just a debacle. And it was terrible to see a company that meant so much to so many gamers just go up in smoke. But thankfully, Wizards of the Coast came along and purchased them, and then they brought you 3rd edition. So once again, an edition that I knew pretty much nothing about. But I gotta be honest, I was not overly keen on their design for their core books either. Yes, I get it. It's kind of like, looks like it's like metallic with hinges and stuff like that. It's like, you know what? I'm sorry. I had core books and stuff. I want some artwork. I want something to tell me, hey, what's going on in this book? Not some silliness like that. Some people really liked 3rd edition. Some people didn't like 3rd edition. Third edition didn't hang around that long because it wasn't too long before 3.5 came along. So, yeah, 3.5. And then after 3.5, then you get 4th edition. So there was not a whole lot of time between the various different editions, as far as if you consider the time between 2nd and 3rd, which, 2nd edition was TSR, and then 3rd edition is Wizards of the Coast. And really, 2nd edition isn't that much different than 1st edition. There are very minor changes between 2nd and 1st, as far as I know. Remember, I got to tell you, I'm not an expert on any edition outside of 5th. I don't even consider myself an expert on 5th. I mean, I've read the books, I've read the adventures, I've reviewed stuff, but that doesn't make me an expert by any stretch. But even just like the change in like Dragon Magazine, to me, now you're starting to look like, this looks more like a, Dragon Magazine starting to look more like a computer game magazine that we would have seen at that time. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess, I'm just partial to, it's like 1st and 2nd edition and 5th. I do like 5th. And I know people are like, yeah, I don't understand how can you like 5th edition? It's crap. I say it all the time. You are never going to run across a perfect role-playing game. Everybody's got their own opinions on role-playing games. And, there are some people out there, it's like, it could be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but if other people like it, they're going to hate it. I mean, that's just how these things work, right? So, I don't know. So, just taking a peek here. Hey, once again tonight, we've got no drop frames to this point. So, that is cool. We were having some issues with that last week. That happened in end of last week. And thankfully, it looks like that might be a thing of the past. Fingers crossed. Now watch. All of a sudden, it just drops the stream and that's it. So now we're moving into. So now we've got showing off some of the minis. I say it all the time. I am not a guy for miniatures for my role-playing games. I love miniatures. I wish I had more time to sit down and paint like I used to. But me, I'm more theater of the mind. But again, I never ran for years, forever. I mean, I've never run a role-playing game where the combat is very tactical, like a 4th edition would be. I'm more, let's tell the story of the fight. Let's make it like over the top, cinematic. I don't necessarily have to be sitting there, plotting every foot of movement and things like that for the characters. So, once again, another artist spotlight here. All right, moving right along. We are getting close to the end. We got about 100 pages to go. And this is a lot of stuff that I had never seen before. So I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was kind of cool. It is kind of funny how you just compare the different editions and just the look of them, and not even just the look of them, the look of the advertisements for them, and the different time. The ads in the 70s and early 80s are way different than like the ads from the 90s. So now we get into 4th edition. This is the one where I actually read the core books. I read the core books over at Elliot Miller's house, actually. I was hanging out there and for a few nights, I recall, and I was reading through the core books at night. So I thought they were fine. I just, once again, I was not into the whole, wow, let's make this a real tactical sort of game here. So just kind of taking a look at some of the 4th edition. Got to admit, 4th edition has some knockout artwork. Once again, 4th edition is one of these. Oh, there we go. That's from the Player's Handbook, right? Oh, Monster Manual. So that's kind of a take of that. Take on that. That's kind of cool. Fresh Eyes, the different beholders. Yeah, beholders have become a big deal, right? Xanathar and everything. that wasn't, they were just another monster as far as, first edition, second edition, I guess. There we go. There's the owlbear. Yes. The iconic owlbear there. So I like the 5th edition artwork for it. I think that's pretty cool. All right. Improve your game with a bookmark. Subscribe now at D&D Insider. So another kind of sad day is when Dungeon and Dragon magazines both went the way of the dodo. Now, of course, there's Dragon Plus that's online, and it's fine, it's okay, but to me, Dragon Plus is just more like a real house organ. I mean, it's mainly like ads. On occasion, you might get an adventure and stuff like that, but mainly it's kind of like just kind of preaching to the choir as far as Dungeons and Dragons, whereas the old Dungeon magazine, the old Dragon magazines, well, Old Dragon used to cover other games outside of just TSR stuff. Not a lot, but it did. Way early in its run. But at least the old Dragon magazine wasn't like... Granted, it was all different stuff about Dungeons and Dragons, but it was all stuff that you could use in your game. Where I don't actually find that in Dragon Plus. So, Viper Dave, hey, don't catch this live much. Later than normal. Love the show. Hey, thanks, Viper Dave. Just so you know, this is the new time slot. I have moved the Daily Dope to 7 p.m. Central because for the next 13 weeks, I am undergoing cardiovascular rehab 3 days a week, which is going to be in the afternoons. Just started my orientation for it yesterday. I actually really start it tomorrow. So decided, hey, I'm going to do it at night. Do it about from 7 to 8, 8:30-ish. So thanks. Glad you like the show. Much appreciated. All right, so then we get into the retro. I remember these reprints because Wizards of the Coast actually sent me review copies of them to share. Then we got Dungeons and Dragons magazine. Then we got Chevy Chase from an episode of Community. Forgotten Realms campaign guide for 4th edition. Once again, some more advertising here. Lords of Waterdeep. That's a pretty good game. I enjoyed that. Then they start talking about D&D Next. I'm in. I remember getting all the playtest stuff for D&D Next. And then we have 5th edition, which should be pretty familiar with a lot of people. Of course, that's the artwork from the Dungeon Master's Guide cover. That's actually a pretty sweet image there. Like that artwork there. So that is the Wizards of the Coast headquarters in Renton, Washington. Funny enough, it's right outside Seattle, and I had been to Renton a bunch of times. I have some friends who live out there that I hung out with when I was delivering RVs around the country, and I never. And the funny thing is, Wizards of the Coast is in Renton, and so is Paizo. And I never had an opportunity to try to touch base to see about going and visiting. Because to be honest, I'm sure they'd been fine. I'm sure they'd have set something up. So, but didn't have a chance to. All right, then we got Curse of Strahd. So we have seen 5th edition kind of reintroduce some classic characters. So of course, they have not created an entire Ravenloft setting. But we did have Curse of Strahd, which is very good, which is really good. I'll be the first to point out, I've said it umpteen times, the first few adventures for 5th edition I did not think were very well done. I thought Horde of the Dragon Queen was pretty lame. Then we start getting into Hydro 74's artwork on the special variants. Actually, that's who Hydro 74 does the artwork for the special edition, the $125 limited edition of this book that includes the I should say includes the Tomb of Horrors from 1975. So, got some more artwork here. The Sword Coast from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Marvelous maps. I do dig the kind of 3D maps that you find nowadays. I think they're pretty cool. I gotta be honest, I am not big on mapping. Never have been. I am big on, you know, tracking time and resources and things like that, but mapping, not so much. What I have players normally just have a blank piece of paper. They start off and they kind of draw a line and they can write kind of like, oh, what did we run into here? And then as opposed to having them sitting there, you're like, okay, let's get the graph paper out and stuff like that. Because the reality is, the gang that I play with now, they don't have the patience to do that. I didn't have the patience to do that when I was playing role-playing games like 3 times a week or 4 times a week during the summer in high school. So all right, moving right along. Got the D&D box starter set, which I reviewed, thought was really, really cool. I have recently reviewed the Player's Handbook as well as the Dungeon Master's Guide for 5th edition, because funny enough, I had never done a video review for those. I will actually be reviewing the Dungeon Master, or not Dungeon Master, the Monster Manual in a few weeks. All right, now we start talking about Roll20. Fantasy Grounds I played around with a little bit. I have yet to actually have an opportunity to really run something for that. I think this is kind of funny with Matt Mercer, and it's just basically, it's a Critical Role ad, but it is a takeoff of one of the first pages in this book right there. I thought that was really funny. Although, instead of the leather jacket, I wish they had put him in overalls like that kid. That would have been just the best. I know some people think that I have like this hatred of Critical Role and the, you know, some of these like live play streams and stuff like that. I don't have a hatred for it. All I tell people is, don't get it in your head for like new players to think that is how the game is played around somebody's table. It just isn't. I'm all for being entertained. I've been listening to the Adventure Zone, which is pretty funny. So yeah, I've been listening to that podcast. So this is Dwarven Forge terrain. Man, they got some really cool stuff. You know, making terrain for miniatures is not that difficult. It is not that difficult at all. I used to make a lot of terrain for 15 millimeter, like war games and stuff like that. I had this huge collection of 15 millimeter American Civil War armies that I sold at a Gen Con, and it was kind of funny. I sold it at a Gen Con, and they made a big deal at the, this is back, it was in Milwaukee. They made a huge deal about it at the auction, and they were like, you know, telling people to come up and see it and stuff like that. I got a good buck off of it, that's for sure. I actually, I did make money on it. I mean, but it was thousands of painted and based Civil War minis. So, all right, so then we get about the authors, get some acknowledgements there as well, and then of course we've got an index, and comes out to 440 pages. 448 must be the might be the, it could be the no, it can't be the Barnes and Noble. Well, Amazon's got the page count wrong. So, and Viper Dave says, hope it goes well. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure Viper Dave's talking about the cardiovascular rehab thing. It'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. All right, so that is Dungeons & Dragons Art and Arcana from 10 Speed Press. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do I think of this? Without a doubt, I give this a 10 out of 10. This is a beautiful book. This is a fantastic book. To me, I was like, oh, it was just reading the PDF. When I got to read the review PDF, it was blowing my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, I remember that. Oh, I remember that artwork. I remember that module. It was such a blast from the past. Plus, it was very cool to see the decades that I didn't follow Dungeons and Dragons. To see, you know, some of the artwork and some of the advertisements and things like that. Really, really think this is a fantastic book. JT just found the show and subscribed. Very interesting. I have the book too. It's awesome. Yes, it is awesome. So, as I said, 10 out of 10, hands down. At $50, it is a steal. But I got to be honest, you can find it online. I saw it on Amazon for $34. $34 probably gets you free shipping too. If you have any interest in the history of Dungeons and Dragons, you have got to get this book. No doubt about it. You've got to get it. $34 on Amazon is a steal. It really is. All right, so that's it for today's show. Thank you very much if you've been tuning in live. And what I always like to say is when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. Come on, you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Tomorrow I will be back, and I will be reviewing Cryptid from my friends over at Osprey Games. So until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night, and thank you very much for watching. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.